Joe Biden opens a kids in cages facility, but the media have a much different take on it this time. Democrats are trying to silence Newsmax and Fox News, plus left-wing Politifact changes some major information regarding Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Wednesday. I hope you're having a great week. If you're new to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to start with Joe Biden and kids in cages. And this is a great example, folks, to tell your friends, tell your colleagues. So many people watch the establishment media, ABC, CBS, NBC, and they take it as fact. They don't have anything to compare to. So whatever they say, we know the media has this left-wing bias. They push socialist talking points. And yet most people watch that. They have no other options and they take it as fact. So when there is a clear and easy example, it's up to us to point it out. And we have one of those. Think about Barack Obama when he was president. Kids were coming over the border. Parents, adults were using them as fake kids, taking off, and the kids were just left there. Or they came unaccompanied. He had to put them in facilities, and the media didn't say a word about it. President Trump comes along, uses those same facilities, and all of a sudden, it's kids in cages. How inhumane, how barbaric, how bad. That's what they were saying. Now, Joe Biden's here. His policies are leading to a surge at the border, and he opened one of those facilities. But the media have a much different spin on it this time. So we're going to get to that spin. But first, here's an update on what's going on at the border because of Biden's new policies. And this is from Town Hall writer Julio Rosas.
In Tijuana on Friday, I spoke to many of the migrants who were just simply confused because they were under the impression that it was going to be a lot easier for them to come into the United States. One woman I spoke to specifically cited Biden's campaign promise to halt deportations for 100 days. The deputy sheriff said that they have already seen an increase in not just narcotics trafficking, but human trafficking. That's the unfortunate consequence of having softer rhetoric on immigration.
So another consequence are the unaccompanied minors. We can't just let them run loose around the country. We have to know where they are so we can do something about them. Either reunite them with sponsors or parents or send them back. That's what needs to be done. These facilities were called kids in cages under the Trump administration. Now the media have a new name for it. And here's the story. The Washington Post raised eyebrows for a report on the first newly opened migrant facility for children under President Biden, which critics compared to the kids in cages mantra that was pushed during the Trump administration. Dozens of migrant teens boarded vans Monday for the trip down a dusty road to a former man camp for oil field workers here. The first migrant child facility opened under the Biden administration. The Post reported from Carrizo Springs, Texas. The emergency facility, a vestige of the Trump administration that was open for only a month in summer 2019, is being reactivated to hold up to 700 children ages 13 to 17. So, in promoting that story, the Washington Post went on Twitter and used this description. First migrant facility for children opens under Biden. That's interesting. Nothing about detention or detention centers. Certainly nothing about children in cages. So what happened? Did the media suddenly get professional? Did they start doing their job? Oh, wait, one thing did change. The person in the Oval Office. It's now Joe Biden, so we have a different take on it. Here are some of the headlines from the Washington Post about these facilities when President Trump was president. Headlines for 2018 include the American tradition of caging children and the real reason we're locking children in cages. In 2019, the Post ran a story titled Viewing U.S. Border Sales Derided as Cages. Central American officials pledge more immigration cooperation. Even the Post editorial board, as recently as September 2020, wrote, the tableau of caged migrant children torn from their parents' arms should be among the most enduring images produced by the president's policies, in a piece warning about what Trump's immigration agenda in a second term would look like. So, of course, the reaction to this blatant hypocrisy was off the charts on social media. Here's a short example. This is referring to the migrant facility for children. A what for what now? I just love that. It sums up everything with this hypocrisy of the left. Goes from children in cages to migrant facility for children. Unreal. And here's the thing, it's not just blowback from the right. This is going to grow on the left as well. Remember, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called these facilities concentration camps. Now, Joe Biden has reopened one of them. And it is all because these immigration policies are so insane. Maybe they should look at those policies and actually do something that helps the country. So next, let's talk about what's going on with the Democrats trying to silence conservative voices. But first, if you're new to the show or haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified. We're making our push for 150,000 subscribers. We just hit 110,000. Thank you very much. We can get to 150 with your help. All right, let's talk about what the Democrats are doing, because they are trying in Congress to silence conservative media like Newsmax and Fox News and One America News. That's what they're pushing. Rather than debate, rather than having people hear both ideas, they just want to silence the opposition. And here's the story. Two House Democrats on Monday questioned 12 television and content providers about why they carry Fox News, One American News Network, and Newsmax, blaming the right-leaning outlets for spreading misinformation and conspiracy theories. Democratic Reps Anna Eshoo and Jerry McInerney, both of California, sent letters to television content providers such as AT&T, Roku, Comcast, and Verizon, asking them why they carried the three purported news outlets that they say function as misinformation rumor mills and conspiracy theory hotbeds that produce content that leads to real harm. See, that's the key right there. Content that leads to real harm. That's how they're trying to phrase this. They're trying to phrase a difference of opinion to hate speech and speech that causes harm. Because who wants harm? Everyone's against that. No one wants anyone to get hurt. So they use that as a way to go after First Amendment rights and shut down the opposition. That is exactly what they are doing. And here's more. Right-wing media outlets like Newsmax, One American News Network, and Fox News all aired misinformation about the November 2020 elections, McInerney and Eshoo wrote. These same networks also have been key vectors of spreading misinformation related to the pandemic. Republicans responded to the letters, saying they were calling to limit free speech rights and marked a departure from First Amendment norms. Democrats are sending a message that is as clear as it is troubling. These regulated entities will pay a price if the targeted newsrooms do not conform to Democrats' preferred political narratives, said Brendan Carr, a Republican commissioner at the FCC. All right, that's what's going on. If you amplify and spread left-wing talking points, the left-wing narrative, all is good. You have their blessing, but you deviate from that. You start to share your own opinion, a differing opinion, and they will come after you. Newsmax put out this statement in response to what's going on.
The House Democrats' attack on free speech and basic First Amendment rights should send chills down the spines of all Americans. Newsmax reported fairly and accurately on allegations and claims made by both sides during the recent election contest. We did not see that same balanced coverage when CNN and MSNBC pushed for years the Russian collusion hoax, airing numerous claims and interviews with Democrat leaders that turned out to be patently false.
So the only thing I'll add to that statement is that what the Democrats were pushing was known to be false. It didn't later come out or turn out to be false. That's what they were pushing from the beginning, a false narrative, but they can get away with it. They can push this stuff, and yet they're going after conservative media outlets. We need to stay on this. We need to fight back. So next, let's talk about left-wing Politifact and what they were doing, what they were saying about Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick and how they changed their tune. Because following the Capitol riots, the big story was that 5 people had died. And the implication was that these were rabid Trump rioters who killed 5 people. There were 5 deaths from the riot, from these Trump supporters. That is totally false. Brian Sicknick was the main one they were pushing because he died so violently, apparently. But let's look at the 5 people who had died. Okay, one was trampled. It was a Trump supporter trampled by other Trump supporters. Tragic, unfortunate, that's what happened. Another one died from a stroke. Another one died from a heart attack. That's 3 out of the 5. The fourth one, Ashley Babbitt, she was shot by a Capitol police officer. She was the Trump supporter. She was killed by a Capitol police officer. So that just leaves Brian Sicknick. Out of the other 4, they were all Trump supporters who died. But Brian Sicknick, that was the story that the media embraced because he was bashed in the head with a fire extinguisher by Trump supporters. That's what the media ran with over and over and over again. It was false. It was 100% false. Sicknick texted his brother that night after the riots had died down and people went home saying he was okay, talking about the events of the day. That's what happened. Yet the media ran with it. Well, they slowly changed their stories. And now, after all this impeachment stuff has finally died down, Politifact is finally changing theirs. And here's the story. The far-left Politifact, a fact-checking site run by the far-left Poynter Institute, waited until this week, long after President Trump's impeachment trial was over, to finally admit Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick was not beaten to death with a fire extinguisher by a Trump supporter. Although far-left CNN reported all the way back on February 4th that the fire extinguisher beating story was a hoax, although the far-left New York Times retracted its false fire extinguisher report on February 15th, despite all this, the utterly useless and dishonest Politifact waited until this week to finally admit the fire extinguisher story was a hoax. So, 4 people who actually died at the Capitol, all of them were Trump supporters, no violence from Trump rioters. That left Brian Sicknick, and the Politifact waited until now to change the story. Now, John Nolte, who wrote that, really let out his anger at the arrogance of Politifact, and here's more. Rather than condemn all the fraudulent reporting, the fake fact checkers at Politifact only condemn this. Some conservative activists have seized on the changing and differing news accounts to accuse the media of exaggerating what happened to Sicknick. Yeah, because telling us a man was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher when he wasn't isn't exaggerating or anything. It's just amazing how much weight CNN and MSNBC and Politifact put on this story because it drove the narrative. It drove the whole narrative of what happened at the Capitol. They kept pushing it, and it was 100% false. All right, so next, let's talk about Republican unity, or the Just Fall in Line movement that's being pushed in Washington. We have Senator Rick Scott. He is the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. He sent out a memo to voters and Republican donors, Republican leaders, saying that the Republican Civil War was canceled. And here's the story. Scott sent out the memo to a broad group of Republicans, slamming Democrats over a number of issues such as border security, the Keystone Pipeline, transgender athletes, fracking, and more. The memo then focused on unity, saying Republicans need to work together to win back the majority in Congress in 2022 instead of attacking each other. The long-running impeachment show is now over. This political theater should have been held at the other end of Washington in the Kennedy Center instead of the U.S. Capitol. It was an unserious circus. It's over. Now it's time to look ahead, Scott said in the memo. So it's an interesting message, interesting timing. And don't get me wrong, we all want to beat the Democrats. But now is the time to look at what happened, look at what certain Republicans said, and debate it, discuss it, do something about it, rather than just this fall in line. Because unless we learn what happened and make some changes, we're going to repeat it. People are sick and tired of Republicans not fighting, not standing up for the conservative values and principles that they say they espouse, that they say they will represent. Now is the time to address it, and then we can go after the Democrats. Here's more. Truthfully, I enjoy bantering back and forth, and I have no interest in trying to quell intra-party policy dialogue and debates. But now is not the time for division, and here's why. For the first time in any of our lives, socialism has become the unabashed governing policy of the Democrat Party. The Democrats are fast abandoning any pretense of allegiance to the First and Second Amendment to our Constitution. They'll give up on the rest of it in due time, Scott added. So he's right about a lot of that stuff. But again, we need to debate. Yes, we need to go after the Democrats. They are full-on socialists. The media's in bed with them. Big tech's in bed with them. But we will never win if we keep carrying with us Republicans who aren't doing the job. That's why we have to focus on our primary system. We need to get people in there who actually will do it. That's why fight hard, fight vigorously in the primaries. When we get the elected officials we want, we go after the Democrats and we hit them because America does not want socialism. But we can't just unify for the sake of unity without solving our own problems first. Folks, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified, and we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is the 13-Minute News Hour. Okay, friends, thanks so much for watching, and before you go, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified, and here's a special video just for you so you can watch even more of the 13-Minute News Hour. And don't forget to check out GOPUSA.com for the best in conservative news and commentary. We'll see you next time.